We still have a few more people to come in. I think one of the things we learned is if you can get people to laugh and sound like you're excited, then more people will come in and take their seats. So, yeah, that's a good start. I was going to actually tell a joke, but you took it away. But I'll tell the joke anyway. So this, and you've probably heard it, but it's a spiritual joke, of course. This young man goes to a monastery, and it doesn't matter what kind it was, but the head of the monastery, calls him in for an interview, and he says, in this monastery we keep silence. And so, are you serious? And he said, yeah, I can do that. And he said, you're allowed 2 words every year, and that's it. So the young man says, all right, I'll do that. So he assigns him to a cell and gives him a rice bowl and go work in the garden or whatever. And so in a year, he calls him back in and says, so what are your 2 words? The young man says, room cold. He says, yeah, I hear you. Go on back and, keep doing what you're doing. He does. A year later, he calls him in again. And he says, so what are your 2 words this year? And he says, food bad. The abbot says, yeah, we've heard it before. So a year later, 3 years, he calls him in again. And he says, all right, now, what are your 2 words? And he says, I quit. And the abbot says, well, I'm not surprised. You've done nothing but complain ever since you got here. So, yeah.
You're doing so well, Sam. I think you should take a chair, right?
Sorry, I'm taking up his time. I think
No.
I think that's a reminder that get off the floor. I'll get the neck hook in a minute. But we will get started with the Now we'll get formal. Yes, welcome to the 2023 Anniversary Sahavas celebrating Avatar Meher Baba's presence at Meher Mount, which was on August 2nd, 1956. Meher Baba made it clear that the thousands of miles he physically traveled around the world and in India were absolutely necessary for his work. He contacted thousands of people in hundreds of places. In July and August of 1956, he circled the globe in 30 days, traveling 30,000 miles and crossing 5 continents. One of those days was August 2nd, and that was the day he spent at Meher Mount. In this Advent, Meher Baba has given the world places sanctified by his life and his work. Kitty L. Davy, a close disciple who was with Meher Baba at Meher Mount, noted, quote, an interesting point here is to reflect on what a great number of treasured and holy spots Baba has left with us to be revered by generations to come, unquote. Darwin Shaw, who was also at Meher Mount that day, expressed this quite beautifully. Quote, amazingly, during his physical lifetime, Meher Baba left continuously flowing fountains of divine energy or vibrations in a great number of places throughout the world. These attest to the timeless omnipotence of this infinite being. Today we're celebrating the wonderful and precious gift of Avatar Meher Baba's presence at Meher Mount. He gave us this place where we can be in his eternal embrace. When Meher Baba was at Meher Mount, he stressed it was a day of relaxation. And he said, here today we feel relaxed, happy. You are so lucky. You are so lucky to be with me so closely. I come down to your level so that we can laugh and be free together. But do not forget at the same time that I am the highest of the high. Joining us today to share his stories of being with Avatar Meher Baba is Merwan Dubash. And it's a real privilege to have him here. Born in what is now Pakistan in 1947, Merwan was named by Meher Baba and grew up under Baba's guidance and his orders. He met Meher Baba for the first time when he was 18 months old and has had the great privilege of spending time with him on many occasions, including the Wadia Park Darshan, 1954, East-West Gathering, 1962, and long visits with Baba in Guruprasad in Pune in the 60s. Merwan and his wife Ruby, who is with us, currently live in Canada, and they spend many months a year volunteering for the Avatar Meher Baba Perpetual Public Charitable Trust in Mehrabad and Mehrazad, India. Merwan was a trustee of the trust from 2014 to 2020. So it's a great pleasure to introduce Merwan Dubash.
Thank you, sir. Well, Jai Baba, everybody. It's really nice to be here. You mentioned something. I think you said Baba said that you don't know how privileged you are to be in my presence. What he would tell us also sometimes is, he said, same thing. You don't know how privileged you are to be in my presence. He said that all these big yogis and saints who sit up in the Himalayas for years and years practicing this yoga and that yoga, he said they would willingly give all that up, their years of penance, give all that up simply to be in my presence for a few seconds. That's what he would tell us. Anyway, I digress. I'm here actually to talk about my experiences and also tell you a couple of stories about my parents, my experiences with Baba, the incidents, how we spent time with him. So I'm going to share all those with you. I don't know how the question and answers work at the end, during the talk. Feel free, as you like. So I'm going to tell you. Now, Sam, actually, I was going to give you an introduction, but Sam's already done that, so I'm going to skip that. So I'm going to tell you what Baba said to the people who went to the 1955 Savas. The 1955 Savas he had was the 4-language Savas, some of you might know. And my dad had gone to that. And my mother, Rhoda, my dad is Adi Dubash, my mother is Rhoda Dubash. Some of you, I gather, know them. So my dad had gone to that because it was a men-only Savas. And on the first day, here's what Baba told them. Baba said, "You have come for my Savas, so forget your worldly commitments, your family, your business, everything. I will take care of that," he said. "You all just be in my company, enjoy my Savas, and make the most of my presence with you here." Now I say that because I believe, and I'm sure you do too, that in this Savas here, Baba is with us here right now. Then this quote that I just read from Baba, he illustrated that to our family very well. Now, as I said, Dad was at the Savas in Mehrabad, and my mom, Rhoda, and I were in Karachi. That's where we came from. First 20 years of my life I spent in Karachi, and that's where I was when I had all the contact with Baba. So my mother, Rhoda, says that one day in the middle of the night, around midnight or a little later, she woke up with a start, almost like somebody woke her up. And she said, "I heard voices, which is unusual." So she said, "That's odd, 2 people speaking to each other." So for a while she listened, and then she said, "I got up and I walked towards the voices." And that led to the front door of our home in Karachi. And she said, to my horror, the front door was wide open. Now in Karachi, even in those days, that's extremely dangerous, very dangerous. And she said when she got to the door, there were 2 people, a couple, very well dressed, one in a suit, the man in a suit, the lady in a sari. And they were talking to each other. And when they saw me, one of them turned around to me and said, "Oh, by the way, do you know where so-and-so lives?" And my mother said she was so, taken aback by this. So she very abruptly said, No, I don't know this," and slammed the door shut. And then she turned around and go back to bed. As she was going back, she thought, "That's odd. So she went over to the window to see these two people. There was a long driveway into the part of the compound where we lived. We lived at the end of the compound. So she said she went to look out the window and there was nobody there, to her amazement. She couldn't see anybody. She said, I looked for a while, but she couldn't see anybody. So anyway, that was the end of that. Then when Dad came back from the Savas, of course, he was telling my mom everything that happened, what Baba said. And he mentioned this, that Baba said this, forget everything and focus on me. I'll take care of all your stuff, your family, your business, everything else. You just focus on me. So my mother, Rhoda, immediately says, Adi, when did Baba say that? So Dad gave her the date, the day. She said, and then Mom said, on that day, on that particular night, this incident happened, and she related the incident. And my mom after that was absolutely convinced that these two people who had come to the door were Abdals. Abdals are souls who are at the back and forth, at the beck and call of the avatar to do their work. Baba had sent these two people to diffuse this dangerous situation of the door being open. So she was absolutely convinced of that. So that's that little story. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple of incidents about my parents, the first meetings they had with Baba. My father, Adi, knew Baba from his school days in the 1930s. And how did he know about Baba? Some of you may have heard of Minu Kharas, the name Minu Kharas, who was a very old Baba lover. He met Baba in 1930-31, around that time. And Minu and my dad were first cousins. And although they were first cousins, they actually were brought up like brothers because Minu was brought up by my grandfather, Adi's mother. So they were like brothers. So when Minu met Baba in the 30s, when he came back, he would share stories with my grandmother and my dad. They were the only two in my dad's family who were interested in Baba. My grandfather wasn't, and Dad had two brothers. They also weren't interested. Although they respected him, they weren't really interested to follow. So Minu would share stories with my grandmother and my dad. And slowly through that, Dad got to know about Baba, and he said, in my own way, I was following him. He hadn't met Baba. In 1947, in April, Baba went to Madras, which today is Chennai. And the circular that went out said that Baba was going for a 4-day Savas program. It wasn't a Savas program, 4-day visit to Chennai. And on one day, in that circular it said, if anybody wants to see Baba and have his darshan, they can come and see him for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. So Minu Kharas hadn't seen Baba for a few years and he was very keen to go. So he tells my dad, Adi, you've been following Baba for so many years, you haven't had a chance to see him now. This is 1947, so Dad's been following Baba for 10, 15 years already. He says, come on, this is a good opportunity, we'll go and see him. So initially my dad was a little reluctant because my mom was expecting at the time. Me? Actually, I guess she was due in May and this was in April, so like a month to go. But my mom somehow said, no, I'm fine. She was in good health. Of course, in that part of the world, you have extended family, you have the in-laws, the sisters, this, that, and other. Everybody pitches in. So eventually, she convinced my dad that he should go. So Minu and my dad go to Madras. They get there the day before Baba is to arrive. They take some rooms in Theosophical Society there. And the next day when Baba arrived at the train station, they go to meet him. And that was the first time my dad saw Baba coming out of the train. So then Baba was going to a place in Chennai where he had a program immediately. So they followed him there. And at the program, they got a chance to take Baba's darshan. And after they'd taken Baba's darshan, Baba said to both of them, why don't you stay here for the next 4 days and come every day? So they did. So every day they would go with Baba. Wherever he had a program, they would go with him. So they spent full 4 days with him. And then on the last day, Baba says that you folks, you check out of your rooms, and this last night, come and stay with the mandli here with me. So they did that. They checked out of the room and they stayed in the same place where Baba was staying with the mandli. And my dad says he was sleeping in the room up against the wall. And on the other side of the wall was Baba's room. So he said he was so excited by that, that he couldn't sleep at night at all. Of course, the next morning, everybody, Baba's whole party, my dad, Minu, they were all getting on the same train. Baba had said, we'll go in the same train. So they got to join Baba in the train journey also. Baba got off at Pune, and the two of them carried on till Bombay, which is where they had to go to return back to Karachi. So instead of 5 minutes, they spent 5 days with Baba. That was Dad's first encounter, physical meeting with Baba. And my dad always used to say that till I met Baba, I was slowly crawling towards him. But he said, after I met him, that turned into a gallop. And he said, nothing could stop me. So that was his first encounter. My mother, Rhoda, she came from a non-believer family, if you like, non-Baba lover family. And in those days, she was a Zoroastrian, from the Parsi community in Karachi. But in those days, the Parsi community was fairly anti-Baba. There was a lot of rumors going about, he's a fraud, he's this, he cheats people, this silence that he keeps is fake. He keeps silence only in public. When he goes inside with his close ones, he talks to them, and all these things were going on. So she'd heard all those stories, all negative things about Baba, nothing positive. But she didn't know that my dad, Adi, followed Meher Baba. So after they got engaged in, I think it was February 1945, my mother was asked to go with her future mother-in-law, my grandmother, to Bombay because she was having some medical treatment there. And my dad and Minu Kharas also accompanied them. So one day while my grandmother was in the hospital, I think she was having some major operation for cancer. She was quite depressed and she was weeping. And Minu was sitting by the side consoling her and said, why are you crying? Why are you crying? In fact, you should be happy because you're living in the age of the living avatar. So my mom's ears all of a sudden prick up. She says, who is this living avatar? So Minu says, Meher Baba. She says, what? You believe in Meher Baba? So Minu says, yes. So immediately she says, does Adi believe in Meher Baba? And Minu says, yes, he does. As soon as he said that, he knew he'd let the cat out of the bag. Of course, my mom was most upset. She and my dad had been going around for 6 to 7 years, and she didn't know this. So my dad was going to come to the hospital when visiting us started at 5 or something like that in the evening. So immediately, a few minutes before 5, she goes over to the top of the stairs and she's waiting there for Adi to come. As soon as she sees Adi at the bottom of the stairs, she goes, Adi, Adi, she's shouting at him, do you believe in Meher Baba? Do you believe in Meher Baba? And my dad is trying to, saying, so he comes up the stairs and she grabs him by the hand and says, Adi, do you believe in Meher Baba? And my dad says, yes, I do. She says, Adi, we've been going together for so many years. You never told me ever. So my dad very innocently says, well, you never asked. So anyway, Rhoda was most upset, she said. That whole night, she said, she tossed and turned thinking, now what do? I love Adi so much. Yet he's following this Meher Baba, and I've heard all these bad things about him. So if I marry him, I'm going to get entangled in all that. So she was tossing and turning with those thoughts going through her mind. She says, finally I decided that I love Adi enough, so I'll marry him. And I'll change his mind and I'll take him away from Meher Baba. Little knowing that, of course, she herself is going to be caught in the divine fisherman's net. So that goes on. And now they get married, and they get married in July 1945. And shortly after, my grandmother again had to go to Bombay for medical treatment. She had quite a few medical problems. And in those days, the doctors in Karachi were terrible. So when she needed treatment for anything major, she would go to Bombay, where the medical treatment was much better. So Minu, Kharas, and my mom were going to accompany her. My dad didn't go this time. But my dad was happy that she was going to accompany my grandmother, because he thought Minu might wangle a meeting with Baba, and in that way, Rhoda will get to meet Baba also. Sure enough, when they're in Bombay, Minu informs Baba that they're there, and is there any chance of us coming to see you? And Baba says, yes, you can come for one day. And Minu says, by the way, Rhoda is with us. So Baba says, yes, just bring Rhoda. She's one of us. So on the appointed day, they catch the train from Bombay to Ahmednagar. And the train was supposed to arrive at 8 at night. But instead, it got delayed and it arrived at 10. Now Adi Senior, Adi K. Irani, was to meet them at the station. And Baba had told Adi that if the train is late, you take them straight to Lower Mehrabad, where he'd arranged rooms for them. And he said, I'll meet them next in the morning, because Baba normally retires quite early. So Adi said, so this is what Baba said, and since you are so late now, I am going to take you to Lower Mehrabad. So he drove them to Lower Mehrabad, where Baba had made arrangements for rooms in the old Dharamsala building. You know, there are small rooms on the side in one of those rooms. So Minu and my grandmother knew the Mandli. They had been following Baba for a while, and they'd seen him and they knew the Mandli. So they were chit-chatting, catching up on old times, you know, as they came out of the car. And then all of a sudden somebody says, Baba's coming down the hill, pointing. In those days, from the old Dharamsala, you could see people coming down the walking path on the hill. There were no trees, no shrubs in the way to obstruct your view. So they could see that Baba was coming down and somebody was holding a lantern with him. So two of them were coming down the hill. So Baba comes down. And that's the first time my mother met Baba. And of course, he inquires how they were, and which is his usual manner, you know, how was the trip and everything else. And then he says, okay, you'll spend the night, you're going to stay the night here. And he had one of his his mandli called Pilamai. Pilamai, Baba used to call my spiritual sister. She was the one who had made the arrangements for Rhoda and my grandmother to stay in the Dharamshala. And she was originally from Karachi. So my mom's family knew her. So seeing a familiar face, mom felt a little more comfortable. So Baba goes with them to the room and he checks everything is there, water's there, this is there, everything is there. And he says, okay, so now I'll go and I'll see you in the morning. And by the way, tomorrow morning, you have to get up at 5 o'clock. Because at 6 o'clock, we're going to the movies. And my mom says, you can imagine my amazement. I mean, I've come all this way to see this great spiritual personality. And the first thing he tells me, we're going to the pictures, and that was 6 in the morning, she says. Anyway, she took it in stride. And next morning, they were ready by 6. Now, a bus comes down from the hill full of women. Apparently, Baba had invited some other women to stay up on the hill. Apart from the women mandli, there were other close women disciples as well. So they were all in the bus. And the first seat in the bus had been left empty so that Rhoda and my grandmother could sit there. So they did, and my mom says, I just could not take my eyes off Baba. Baba was sitting 2 or 3 seats behind them with Mira. And she says, as soon as the bus started moving, I kept turning around and looking. I kept turning around and looking. My grandmother, who was very prim and proper, after a while she nudged her with her elbow and said, Rhoda, behave yourself. This is rude. You can't keep turning around and staring at people. So mom says I had to sit straight like this and ignore my urge to keep looking at Baba. So they got to the movies. The movies were the Sarosh Cinema, which is just opposite. It's now a ramshackle building, just opposite the trust office. If you've been to Nagar, you know where it is. Sarosh was doing the movie, the showing, special showing for Baba, which he would do off and on whenever Baba wanted. And of course, early morning, there would be nobody else, just Baba and whoever he brought with him. So they went into the cinema. Mom said that they had seats reasonably close to Baba. And she said, the whole time, I just kept looking at Baba. I don't even know what film was on the screen, she said. I just kept looking at him. And unusually, Baba sat through the whole movie. Normally, the Mandli would always complain that Baba would only see quarter of the movie, half of the movie, and then when his work was done, he would say, come on now, let's go. So they would leave the movie in the middle of the showing. So they would always complain that we never got to see the end. In this case, Baba saw the whole movie. But my mom didn't have a clue what it was. So they go by 10 o'clock in the morning, they're back at Mirabad. They have an early lunch, which was their practice in those days, and Baba gives them an interview in the East Room, which is where the women Mandli stayed, Mera Mani, in those days. And then they met the women Mandli, and Baba asked one of them to show them around Mirabad, Upper Mirabad, and things like that. And by the time all this was done, it was time to go. So, and they left, of course, and my mom says, that first meeting with Baba made a tremendous impression on me. All the negative feelings, all the negative apprehension that I had about him just simply vanished. But, she said, that didn't mean I was his. She said it still took another 7 years before I was actually convinced that he is who he says he is, God in human form. So till 1952, it took her to get that conviction. So that was Rhoda's first meeting. Now I'm going to switch to my experiences with Baba. As Sam said, I first met Baba in 1948. I was 18 months, 19 months. Actually, the exact date was 31st December 1948. Easy date to remember. A small group of us from Karachi had come to see him just for that one meeting, just short meeting. Baba had allowed us. So Minu Kharas goes in first. Minu was the oldest Baba lover in Karachi at that time, and he'd known Baba for quite a while. So Minu went in. Baba asked Minu to come in first. Minu went in first. And then Baba asked Minu to bring me in. So Minu picked me up, took me in. My mom and dad were still outside. Minu says, Baba took you in his lap, played with you for a few minutes, and then he put me on the floor. I was crawling around, and then he asked Minu to go get my parents. And the three of them were chit-chatting with Baba. So I must have gone and sat, if Baba was here, I had gone in the back of the hall. And I sat up, and all of a sudden I said, Baba. So Baba heard me, and he points to me and he says, out of the many on the waiting list, I have selected him. And then Baba met with the other people who were also in the Karachi group. It was a short meeting. So that was the first meeting with him. The next time I saw Baba was in 1952, on his return from the US after the accident. Baba's leg was in plaster and he was in a wheelchair. And on his return to India, there was a very sudden strike of some airline staff. I think it was BOAC in those days, the British Airlines. And Baba's whole journey got disrupted. But he wanted to get back to India in a rush. So he started his journey and he was going to end up in Karachi, which wasn't on the schedule. So he sent a telegram, a cable. In those days it was all telegram or cable or letter, everything handwritten, right? Telling Minu that I'm going to be in Karachi on such and such a date. You come and meet me at the airport and come alone, he said. So Minu now had known Baba for quite some time, so he knew his ways. So he tells my dad, he says, Adi, Baba said I should come alone, but I know his ways. He might want some running around to do this, do that. So you come with me, but you can't come inside to see Baba with me. You have to wait outside. And only if Baba needs some work or allows you to come in, then you can come. Otherwise, you may have to stay outside the whole time. And Dad said, that's fine. So the two of them went. So when Baba came, Minu went to see him, and Baba says, everything okay? Minu says, yes. Baba says, you came alone? Minu says, well, no, Baba. I says, I told you to come alone. He says, yes, Baba, but I brought Adi Dubash with me in case you need any work, any running around. Minu was also smart. See, as I say, he knew Baba's ways. He said, he's telling, in case you need anybody to run around and do some work, he'll be very useful. So Baba said, where is he? He says, I don't see him. He says, Baba is waiting outside. So Baba says, call him. So Dad gets to going. And then, Baba's asking Dad this, and Baba didn't know Dad too well at that time. Dad had only seen him once before. So he must have asked my father, what do you do? And my father said, he's in shipping, this, that. So Baba says, you know what? I need to go to Bombay in the next available flight. Go and see if you can get 6 tickets. There was Baba, Mera, Mani, Gaver, Meru and Rano. Those were the 6 people. So my dad goes to the ticket counter at the airport, and there's a clerk over there. And my dad says, I need 6 tickets immediately. So the fellow flips through his books. Of course, everything was manual in those days, so it took him a while to flip through it all. He says, I'm sorry, sir, everything's booked. There was a flight that day in the afternoon, and Baba wanted to be on that flight. He says, sorry, everything's booked. So my dad goes up and tells Baba, Baba, there's nothing. Baba says, no, I must go today. He says, go again and ask him. So Dad goes down. The clerk says, Ari sir, you were just here a little while back. I told you that. He said, please. My big brother, he has to go. We never identified Baba as Mer Baba when he was traveling. He's always big brother or something like that, right? My elder brother. Please, have another look, just in case. So the fellow obliged and he looked. He said, I'm sorry, sir, there's nothing. So Dad goes and tells Baba. Baba says, no. There has to be, I have to go today, he says. Go and try again, he says. He sent him back. Dad, of course, wasn't used to Baba's ways, right? So Dad now is feeling all tensed up because he's going to talk to that same clerk who's about to bite his head off. So he goes down, he's a little tentative about this. And this time the clerk sees him coming, he says, what's the matter with you, sir? How many times do I have to tell you there's no seats available? But somehow or the other, that convinced him to look again. So he looks and he says, you know what, sir, there's one seat. One seat. So Dad goes and tells Baba. Baba says, no, that's no good. I must have at least 4 seats. Now Baba had also come down. Baba was compromising also. From 6 he wanted 4 seats, right? He wanted, of course, himself, Mera, Mani and Gaver to go with him. And then Rano and Meru could come at the next available flight. So now Dad is really uptight. So he goes down, he stands at a distance from the clerk, from the counter, watching, because there were a few people there also. So he's standing there watching, he's thinking, now I got to get a good opportunity to catch this fellow. So when that fellow stops dealing with these people, he looks up and he sees my dad and he goes, "What are you doing here again, sir?" So my dad says, "No, come on, please." I don't know what Dad said to him, but the man in sheer disgust, he throws the book on the counter and he looks through it. And he says, "You know what, sir? There are 4 tickets." So Dad was ecstatic. He runs up the steps and he tells Baba, "Yes, we've got 4 tickets." So Baba was pleased now. Minu Kharaset also told us when he got the cable from Baba, the rest of the group in Karachi, that any time while Baba is at the airport, he might say, "Okay, let the Karachi group come and just meet me," Although in the cable he only said, "You come alone," he said Baba could change his mind anytime. So he said, "Be prepared. You be absolutely ready. Soon as you get the call, you must leave. No dilly-dallying, no, I'm going to get dressed for half an hour, nothing like that. Come immediately, so be ready." And sure enough, Baba said, "Well, maybe the Karachi group, if they want, they can come and meet me." So all of us ended up at the airport to meet him. In the airport in those days, even today I guess, they have VIP rooms. And Minu had booked a VIP room for Baba through some connection. Minu used to be in the police at one time. So through some connection he was able to get a VIP room that he booked for Baba, because Mera was with him. You couldn't just leave Mera sitting out in the open airport with all these hundreds of people milling around. So we were in this special VIP room with Baba. And Baba was in a wheelchair all the time. So we get to meet him. That was the second time I met him. My little brother Homi was with us also at that time. That was also the first time I think he saw Baba. And Baba went. Then he got on the plane and left. Now you might be wondering why Baba was in such a rush to get to India. When he got to India, he immediately from the airport he went to Mirazat. Normally his practice would be after a long trip like that, he would stop in Bombay for a day or two to refresh, take a little rest, stay with Arnavaz, Nariman, who are his close mandli, who lived in Bombay. But this time he immediately from the airport he went to, Mirazat. I didn't know this till I read Lord Mayor. The next day, one of his disciples ends up on his doorstep for his help. That's why he was in such a rush to get to Bombay on that flight. Now that's another story in itself. So that was the second time I met Baba. 52, then in 1954 was this Wadia Park Darshan program that Sam referred to. This was a public darshan program that Baba had in a public park in Ahmednagar. Today, that area that was a park, wide open green spaces all built up, you can't even tell there was a park existed in that location. And estimates of how many people came to take his darshan on that day vary from 30,000-40,000 to 60,000-70,000. So there was a humongous amount of people there. I was only 7 years old, so I only remember so much. But the couple of things I remember was that the crowd, huge crowd. And the other thing I remember, which of course appealed to me, there was a small dais built for him, stage, and there was a chair on the stage, a nice comfortable chair, and Baba sat in that chair for a while. But then, as more and more people started coming for darshan, Baba got down from the chair, sat on the platform, and with 2 hands, he had basket of prasad on either side. With two hands, he was giving prasad like this. That's how fast the darshan was going, because there were so many people. I remember that. The prasad was what? The prasad was chickpeas coated with sugar coating on the outside. And as a kid, I loved that. So somehow, I found my way up to the back of Baba's stage. And over there, lined up, were baskets full of prasad. Because Baba was going through them so fast that immediately one finished, the Mandi would come and put one next to him so that not to disrupt the darshan program. And I thought, geez, I love that stuff. So I'm looking around, saying, anybody looking? And I didn't think anybody was looking, so I took a little. I must have taken 2 or 3 handfuls of it and eaten it. Now, normally Baba would catch you. One way or another, he would find an excuse and he would catch you. But I was only 7 years old, right? So he let it go. He didn't say anything. I got away with it. I think I got away with it anyway, but probably not. So I remember that. The other thing I remember was, because there were so many people, at the end of the day, Baba wasn't able to give darshan to everybody. So he said he would give darshan the next day in the trust office compound for the people who hadn't seen him. But he also said that because you haven't had my darshan, he got up on the top of Adi Ke Irani's car, a blue Chevy, a big old, 1940 something model Chevy. He got up on the roof, sat on the roof, and the car slowly at walking pace left the park, and Baba was waving to everybody from the top. I remember, you've probably seen it in the movies also. I remember that. Now the rest of the things were narrated to me, what I'm going to tell you about this. At this program, Baba had asked for a few hundred poor people to be assembled, to be brought to the program, because he was going to feed them. He was going to give them some food. And he was also going to wash the feet of a few selected ones from that group of the poor. So these people were situated at a little side of the general congregation. And because food arrangements were made, nobody else got food. All they got was Baba's darshan and prasad. Food was only for the poor. So when food was served to them, they didn't eat. So somebody else, come on, eat. Why are you waiting for this? They said, sir, how can we eat? It would be most inappropriate, disrespectful for us to eat if Meher Baba, who is giving us the food, himself doesn't partake of some of the food. So this message was relayed to Baba. So Baba stopped the darshan program and he went over to where the poor were sitting, and he took a little food and ate, and only then they ate. And as I said, Baba also washed the feet of some of them. So we were a small group from Karachi there. I think my parents, myself, my grandmother, Minu Kharas, his wife, and maybe 2 or 3 other Baba lovers from Karachi. The program was, of course, all day. Now, in the afternoon, September is a very hot month in India. We started feeling thirsty. There was no bottled water or anything like that in those days. So we're looking for water, drinking water. So we look here, we look there, can't find anything. Finally, Minu sees one of the mandli, and says, where can we find drinking water? He says, look over there, maybe there might be a bucket or so of water. So we go in the general direction of where this person pointed. And sure enough, there's a bucket of water. So we look at it, and somebody in the group says, this doesn't look like drinking water, it's all murky, it's not very clear. So Minu said, Minu was the expert, so-called expert in those days, because he'd been to Ahmednagar many times. So Minu said, no, Ahmednagar water is like this only, it's never very clear, it's a little murky, it's not clear. I guess we were so desperate, we were so thirsty, we drank it up. Hardly had we drunk up the water, And within seconds, one of the men mandli turns up, I can't remember who now. And he asks us, he says, wasn't there a bucket full of water here? So he says, yes, this bucket had some water in it. So he said, what happened to it? He said, we drank it. He says, what? You drank it? He says, oh, he says, now Baba's not going to like this at all. Baba's not going to. Tell us why Baba's not going to like it. All we did was we drank the water. He says, this was the water that Baba used to wash the feet of the poor. And he asked us to keep it. They would take it off the platform and put it in the bucket. Just imagine. Just wash the feet of the poor. In those days, today everybody in India wears, at least they wear slippers, if nothing else, chappals. In those days, the poor never even wear that. They would walk bare feet. You can just imagine the state of that water. And we just drank it up. All sorts of thoughts went through everybody's mind. But you won't believe, nobody even got a stomachache after drinking that water. Not only that, we never even heard from Baba. So although Baba was told, he would have probably laughed it off or said, let it go, something like that. So that's what I remember from the Wadia Park Darshan. So that was 1954. The next opportunity, Rhoda and I get, Dad meanwhile went to the Savas in 55, and I think he met Baba once more. But the next time Mum and I also got a chance to go to India was in 1958. That's when Baba had the Savas in Mehrabad. That was the only Savas which had men and women. Because the women, Baba's women disciples complained to him, says, Baba, what's this? Every Savas you have is men only, men only. When do we get a chance to have your Savas? So Baba finally relented and he said in 1958, I'll have a Savas, both men and women, which was in Mehrabad. Now, my dad had been asked to go as a volunteer, and Mum and I were going to stay in Panchgani. Panchgani is where Baba has his cave, if you've heard of, up in the mountains. And we get to Bombay. We spend a few days in Bombay. Now, whenever we travel to see Baba, we would always let him know our full itinerary. What flight we were coming, what train we would catch, where we're staying, the address, telephone number where they could contact us, everything. So they knew where we were and they could contact us anytime they wanted. So while we were in Bombay for a few days, I forgot, before that. When we first found out that the 50th Savas was going to be held, it said that it would only be for people over 18 years. I think there was an age limit. I was only 11 years old. So I was most upset that I couldn't go to see Baba. And I'm sure with a little instigation from my parents, I actually ended up writing a letter to Baba, saying, Baba, I would like to come to your Savas. Or, in those days we didn't have the wisdom to retain copies of the letters we sent to Baba. So I actually don't remember what I actually wrote. But I did write a letter to Baba. And we got a response. And in that response, which was from Erach, of course, Baba said things like, how happy Baba is to receive my letter, and he loves me, and this and that. And then he says, which I quote, you must not in capitals, N-O-T, feel sad if you are not, again, in capitals, uppercase, allowed to be with your mummy and daddy for the Mehrabad Savas. So even at 11 years old, I got the clear message that Baba said no. So of course I forgot all about it. Then, as I say, when we were in Bombay, we were staying with some friends. Before Dad went off to the Savas and we went off to Panchgani. And one day at 8 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings and our host picks it up and he says, Adi, this call's for you. So Dad takes it and it's one of the mandli, men mandli. He says, Adi, Baba says he would like to meet little Merwan. Is that possible? So Dad says, of course it's possible, thinking that Baba will call me the next day or the day after or something like that. So he says, of course it's possible. He says, when would Baba like to see Merwan? He says, how about now? So immediately he says, okay. Dad said, okay. So immediately whatever we had, we got dressed and everything, and Dad told him it'll take us a little while because we're not even ready, we haven't been dressed. So he said, okay, come as soon as you can. So we went. Baba was staying at Arnavaz and Nariman's house. Now Arnavaz and Nariman lived on the second floor, and there's the staircase to their apartment went from the outside, so you could see clearly the whole staircase and who was going up it. When we got there, Bhau was at the bottom of the stairs. He was waiting, and he saw us. He said, come on, come on. He says, Baba's waiting for you. What took you so long? So we said, okay, so let's go. So we started walking up the stairs, and Bhau all of a sudden turns to my Rhoda and Adi and says, no, 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 not you two. Baba only wants to see Merwan. So you two wait here. So they waited down, and I went up with Bhau. And 58, I'm 11 years old, okay, so the memory isn't that great. But I remember a few things. Baba was sitting in the sitting room of Arnavaz and Nariman's home. He was in his shorts, and it was the only time I have seen him with his hair open. Otherwise, he always had his hair braided and tied up, but it's the only time his hair was open. And as I say, I don't remember the exact conversation that he had with me, because at 11 but he must have asked the normal things like, how are you and this and that, and he may have even said something about not being at the Savas, but as I say, I don't recollect any of that. I think I was with him 10-15 minutes, and then Baba said, okay, now leave. That was the shortest meeting I've had with him. So Dad goes to the Savas at Mirabad, and my mother and we go to Panchgani. Now what's in Panchgani? Panchgani, my mother had first cousins who owned a boarding school. Panchgani is famous for its boarding schools, even today. And they owned a boarding school called Bilimoria High School. So they were the principals also, two brothers, co-principals. So we stayed with them. Boys' school, it had sports facilities, it had this, it had a tuck shop, it had kids galore. Panchgani has 5 tablelands, flat tablelands. And from the school, there was a trail going up to one of the tablelands. You could do all sorts of things. I had a great time. I'm telling you this, you'll see why in a minute, later on when I'm telling you a story. Within a couple of days of getting there, Mom got a cable from my dad saying, Baba, the volunteers need help, so Baba says, call Rhoda. So my mom took off, and I spent the rest of the time in Panchgani. I had a great time. Now, whether my Baba calling me to see him in Bombay was linked to my writing him a letter or not, I don't have a clue. Whether the two were linked or totally independent, till this day I don't know. So now, this is 1958. By now, my parents are now wholly into Baba. They want to see him any opportunity they get. In 1960, a circular or letter or whatever came around saying that Baba would be in Guruprasad as usual. By that time, his routine had become in the summer months, April, May and June, he would go to Guruprasad to escape the searing heat of Ahmednagar. So when the letter said that when Baba is in Pune, from such and such a period, not the full 3 months, but a specified period, he would give darshan to his lovers on Sundays, once a week, from 10 in the morning to I think it was 12:30 or 1 or something like that. So my parents read this, and they both decided that this is a good opportunity to see Baba. We haven't seen him now for a couple of years. So we decided to go for a month. We'd see Baba 4 times, right? Once a week. So we go. Now, remember I told you Baba had the full details of our travel, when we were arriving, what train and everything. The darshan program was on a Sunday, so on the Saturday we were arriving in Pune. Now we knew that in Pune, Guruprasad was in Bun Garden Road, that's where Baba lived. We knew that the hotel we were living in was called Mobo's Hotel, which was always also on Bun Garden Road. It was literally a 5-minute walk to Guruprasad, very convenient. But not having been to Pune ever in our lives, we had no idea where any of this was located in Pune, how close it was to the station, how far it was from, we had no idea of any of this. So we get to Pune, we go in a train called the Deccan Queen, which runs today even, same timing, gets into Pune around 8ish in the evening. And we take our luggage off the train on the platform now, deciding what we're going to do. And all of a sudden we hear someone calling, Adi, Adi. So we look around and Irach is there. So Irach had come to greet us. Now Irach in those days, when Baba would go to Guruprasad, Baba had told Irach that in the evenings you go and spend time with your family in Pune. Irach's family, the Jasawala family, lived in Pune in a place called Bindra House. Bindra House is very famous in Baba lore because Baba used to visit it regularly. So Irach would go there in the evening after doing all his work at Guruprasad. So whether Irach decided to come and meet us or Baba asked him to meet us, I don't know. We never asked. But Irach was there. So Irach said, come on, I'll take you to Mobo's. So we went to Mobo's hotel. Irach makes sure everything is there. You happy with the room? Yes. He says, remember tomorrow the darshan program is 10 o'clock. Don't be late. In fact, be early. Don't come like 5-10 minutes before the darshan. Come well before it. So we said yes. So again he makes sure everything is there. And just before he leaves again, he says, remember, be early. So we said, yes, we'll be early. So we get to Guruprasad next morning, 9:30. Now in the movies you may have seen Baba in Guruprasad. The main hall is a huge door leading into the hall. This grand marble staircase going up and this big broad veranda. And the door is half wood and half glass, so you can see through into the hall. The hall is empty right now. And the line starts at the door and is starting to go down the veranda and it soon starts to wind out into the compound. But because we were a little early, we were still on the veranda, so you could see into the hall. 10 o'clock sharp, a side door on the right, which is the men's side, inside the hall, opens. We later find out that that is the door that leads to Mandli Hall, where Baba would sit regularly with the men Mandli. And Baba comes out, he's dressed in his big coat, his white sadra. He walks up to the top of the hall where there's a big, nice upholstered chair for him on a slightly raised platform. And he sits in it. And then he sits in it and the doors open. And of course, the darshan program is very orderly. It wasn't a mass rush inside or anything. Very orderly, single file. You took Baba's darshan, and then after taking his darshan, you would find a place in the hall to sit for the remainder of the program. So when our turn came, we took Baba's darshan. He asked the usual questions. How was your trip? How's your health? Did you sleep well? Is your hotel room good? These are the normal questions Baba would ask you. Then he turns to my dad, Adi, he says, from tomorrow, you come every day at 8 o'clock. And when 12 o'clock, when I go in to the ladies' side to have my lunch and to be with the ladies for a little while, you go have your lunch and come back by 2 o'clock. And then you stay with me till I retire in the evening, which would be about 4:35, around like that. And he then points to my mother Rhoda and me and he says, Rhoda and Merwan, they should come with you at 8 o'clock. And at 12 o'clock when I go in for my lunch, he says they can go home. So just like that, what we thought was going to be a visit to see Baba one day a week for 2 to 3 hours, Baba said come every day. Unbelievable. So we were ecstatic, of course. So we started going we started going to see Baba. I would go with my mom 8 to 12 and dad would stay the whole day. I was 13 years old and I was a very active guy. I didn't like just sitting around doing nothing. And in the morning, when you went to Guruprasad, there would be a few people coming, sometimes 15, 20 people, sometimes that whole little room. Mandli Hall was probably a little bigger than this room. The side Mandli Hall where Baba sat would be packed, and with people sitting on the floor, you could easily have about 50 people or so jammed up. And Baba would talk, people would come, they greet him, Baba would ask them this, that. So the whole morning would go like that. Just chit chat, this, that. Occasionally Baba would give a discourse or something like that. And you just sit there in front of him. Now at 13 years old, I told my parents, I'm getting bored. I said, there's nothing to do. So I must have pestered them quite a bit, because they then wrote off. I said, I want to go to Panchgani. Now you know why I want to go to Panchgani. I had a great time there. So I must have pestered them a lot. So they wrote off. Mom wrote off to her cousin saying Merwan wants to come there. And because they'd written off, they had to tell Baba. So they tell Baba that Baba, Merwan is saying bored, he wants to go to Panchgani. They didn't even put it diplomatically, So Baba makes a face, he says, he's getting bored? I said, yes, Baba. So he thinks for a few seconds. Then he says, okay, from tomorrow, let him come with Adi in the afternoons also. I said, oh, now I got to sit all afternoon doing this. See how wrong I was. The afternoons were completely different from the mornings. To start with, in the afternoons, there would be 10 people, 12 people. Occasionally, on a weekend, when some more of his close ones came from Bombay, there might be 15, 20 people in the afternoon. Tops, that was rare. Mostly it would be 10, 12 people in the afternoons. And when Baba would come back from the women's side at 2 o'clock, the first order of business was Erach reading the correspondence to him. And, and Baba would say, okay, you reply like this. In fact, in 95% of the cases, Erach had become so adept at this. Erach himself would say, Baba, I'll say this, I'll tell them this, I'll tell them that. And Baba would say, yes. Rarely would Baba say, no, tell them this. Or if it was a very different or unusual type of request, then Baba would dictate what he wanted to respond to. So depending on the number of letters there were and everything, it could be 10, 15 minutes or half an hour if there was a lot. And then Erach would go out with the letters to answer them. And then Baba would look around the room and say, is there anything else? Pendu might have something, Aloba might have something, Mirji was there, they might have something else to talk to him about. And so if so, that was discussed, and Baba would say, anything else? I said, no, Baba, nothing. Nothing else? No. Time for cards. So the cards would come out. So the first day I was there, Baba says, you know how to play cards? I said, Baba, I love playing cards. And I did as a kid, I loved playing card games. He says, but do you know Laris? I said, no, Baba, I had never heard of Laris. I don't know how to play Laris. As it turns out, it's a very simple game based on trumps, you call. I mean, if you're a card player, you know what I'm talking about. So he said, okay, you do this, you sit and you watch for 2 or 3 days, and then we'll see whether you can play or not. I said, okay. But then he turns to me, but he says, I don't want you to get bored. So he says, what I want you to do is when the game finishes and the players throw their cards on the floor, you pick it up and you shuffle and you deal the cards. He says, you know how to shuffle? I said, yes, Baba, I know how to shuffle. So he said, then you do that. So I did that for 2 or 3 days. When you deal the cards out, You first give the cards to Baba, of course, and then everybody else. So I did that for 2 or 3 days, and then Baba asked me, he says, can you play now, you think? I said, yes, Baba, I can play. So he said, okay, you can join. Now, how was this game of Laris played with Baba? If I'm Baba, right, sitting here, I would be sitting on a chair, Baba would be sitting in a chair, and everybody else is, of course, on the floor. The people in the room would form a circle around him like that. And every alternate player was in Baba's team, and the other players would be in the second team. So 2 teams. And it's simple game of trumps. Whoever makes the most hands wins the game. But of course, this was a special game with Baba. And it was for his enjoyment, his pleasure, to ease his burden. He always used to say that it eases my burden. Although he said, I also work with you guys. Don't think it just eases my burden. All the energy, and there was a tremendous amount of energy in the room. I used that for my work also. There were 3 versions of Larisk, okay? The first version, everybody and his brother, including Baba, would cheat. If the joker was the top card, right? So if you had the joker, you would flash it to your friend, and in case he had the ace or something, so then he would call out trumps and like that. And Baba would show it, and sometimes Baba would be so blatant, he would say, I have the ace, but I don't have the joker. He says, who has the joker? So somebody would put up their hand. Even if the guy was in the opposite team, Baba would say, give me a joker. So he would take the joker from you, he'd give you a 7 of hearts or some card like that, right? So this would go on, and there was a lot of banter back and forth between everybody, a tremendous amount of energy, and Baba really enjoyed that. Second version was occasionally Baba would say, today, no cheating. I said, okay, Baba, no cheating. So we'd play carefully, watching our cards, not trying to look at somebody's, and then all of a sudden somebody would look up, and he would see Baba flashing his card to his teammates, say, Baba, you're cheating. So Baba says, yes. I said, you can't cheat. He said, I didn't say I can't. I'm sorry. I didn't say I can't cheat. So it was like that. And the third version, which was very rare, Baba would say, today nobody is going to cheat, even I won't cheat. And that would be very straight game. But the most fun, and the one that Baba enjoyed the most, was the first variety, where everybody cheated, and there was a lot of banter back and forth. And when Baba would want to declare trumps, he would put his hand up like this L, meaning Laris, I'm going to declare trumps. Baba would do that. So there were 2 teams. And the team that lost had the privilege of rubbing their nose on the carpet in front of Baba. Now, whether it was Baba's team or the other team, of course, Baba would never do that, but all the other players would do that. And Baba would tell us regularly, he would say, you just don't know how fortunate you are to rub your nose in front of me. So that's how part of the afternoon went. The other thing that happened in the afternoon, in those days, Baba used to go for house visits to his close lovers in Pune. He had told his close lovers in Pune that if you want me to visit your house, you can invite me for tea at 3 in the afternoon. So of course, quite a few of them invited him. So we would go at least once a week, occasionally maybe twice a week. And normally there would be 2 cars. And if everybody who was there in the afternoon fitted in the 2 cars, we would all go with Baba. If not, whoever stayed behind would go on the next visit. So Baba made sure that everybody got a chance. Of course, some of the mandli like Erach, Merji, people like that would go with him all the visits. So we would go to these house visits. Of course, Baba's coming to your house. You are going to have the best bread you can afford on the table, right? Sweet, sour, savory, spicy, anything you can think of is there. And of course, tea. Tea was the drink. It's tea for tea time. Now, Baba, there were 3 youngsters at that time who would be there regularly, the twins and myself, right? And Baba would tell us, now, when you go for tea, he says you eat as heartily, as much as you can, like this. He would, to exaggerate, fill up your stomach as much as you can. So we said, yes, Baba, we will. And we did. But we were only in our early, I was 13, I think the twins 15 or something. But we, being with Baba's party, we always were on our best behavior because we knew, we couldn't fool around or do any mischief. After all, we were with Baba. So we would go on these house visits. I remember one distinctly, and that was Madhusudan's house. You know the name Madhusudan? Madhusudan was the Pune Center fellow who wrote a lot of ghazals. He wrote 2 of his artis, the Jahan Kalpana arti, the Hindi arti which is sung at the Samadhi was written by him. He wrote the Marathi arti, and tons of songs, ghazals he's written for Baba. And he would regularly perform in front of Baba. So Baba would ask Madhusudan, he would say, all these other people are inviting me for tea, but you who are so close to me, when are you going to invite me? So Madhusudan said, Baba, you know why I don't invite you. My house is so small that your party won't be able to fit in, Baba. You'll be all be cramped up and this and that. And Baba says, so what? And this would go on back and forth. Finally, one day Baba got fed up with this, so he turns to Madhusudan. He says, I've been asking you for so long and you're not inviting me. So I'm going to invite myself to your house, he says. And he's on such and such a date at 3 o'clock, I will come to your house for tea. Now what could Madhusudan say? He said, yes, Baba, of course. So on that appointed day, we go to Madhusudan's for tea. Now Madhusudan lived in the old part of the city, small streets, congested, a lot of people. And there were 2 main conditions for people when Baba went to their house. One, you can only invite your very close relatives and your very close friends. Otherwise, with large families in India, there would be masses of people. Baba didn't want that. And the second thing was, you should not tell your neighbors that Mir Baba is coming to visit for the same reason. He didn't want large crowds there. On that particular day, for some reason, the neighborhood got to know that Baba was coming. And when we got close to Madhusudan's place, we could see these hundreds of people on the sidewalk all waiting and we wondering what's going on. Then we realized they're waiting for Baba. So when the car stopped outside his house and Baba got out, this mass of people all surged to, in India, they want to touch a personality like that, just a touch, either from him or even them touching him. But that's dangerous. With that many people, you never know, people pushing from the back, Baba could get hurt. So we had to form a sort of a human cordon around him by holding hands, to protect him and walk him to Madhusudan's house. Now Baba had also told us before we went there, he says, remember, Madhusudan's house is very small. So all of you shouldn't come in at once. 50% of you stay outside and the other 50% will go in, and when they're finished eating and have their tea, they'll come in and then you can go in. So we did that. So that was the visit with Madhusudan. Oh, the other thing Baba told me, this wasn't in the afternoon, but once I started going regularly, he says, you want to do something, right? Because you're sitting around, you feel bored. I said, I sort of nodded my head, I suppose. So Baba says, in the mornings, the twins, they clean the flooring of my room. In India, you take a damp cloth and clean the floors, pick up all the dust, right? Because of the amount of dust that goes around. And the twins would do that. So he says, if you want, you can join them and clean my room. I said, yes, definitely, Baba, I'll do that. So the 3 of us would clean his room in the morning. That would take up about an hour or so. We would haggle about, no, this is 1/3, that is 1/3. We wanted to make sure we all got the equal share of that, right? You know how kids are like that. So he made me do that. Then one day Baba comes in the afternoon and he says, Pendu tells me that you youngsters are making such a lot of noise that he can't get his afternoon nap. Now Pendu, because of the 56 accident where he was injured seriously, he needed this afternoon rest. And 12 to 2 was the lunch break when Baba was on the ladies' side. So after lunch, Pendu's job was household chores and stuff like that. So he make sure everything was clean, and then from 1 to 2 he would try and get some rest. And we were disturbing that. So we said, sorry Baba, we didn't know that. So he said, now you must keep quiet. Yes, we will. This was to Rustam, Saurabh and me, the 3 kids. 3 or 4 days later, Baba comes and he said, I thought I told you to keep quiet. Pendu still can't sleep. So we said, Baba, we thought we were much quieter than before. He said, no, you're still disturbing him. So he said, from tomorrow, if either of you are in Guruprasad between 12 and 2, you have to keep silence. So for the remainder of the stay between 12 and 2, we were silent in Guruprasad. And then Baba says, Pendu says that there's somebody also playing the harmonium. Who is that? So I said, Baba, that's me. He said, what are you doing? I said, Baba, I was trying to practice on the harmonium your Gujarati Aarti, the first one that Adi Ke Irani's brother Rustam had written, called Meher Raj. So he said, so can you play it? I said, yes, Baba, with sort of 2 fingers like that, not very well. So he did this, meaning, I want to hear it. So I said, okay, so I got the harmonium and I played it. He didn't say it was good or bad or anything. It certainly wasn't good. But he says, you know, this gives me a good idea. We'll play a joke on the women mandli. So Baba immediately calls Dr. Gaver. There was a bell in Mandli Hall which you could ring and the women would hear it and Dr. Gaver or Rano would respond. Dr. Gaver came. He says, tell Mehra that on such and such a day at 3 o'clock, 3 famous kawals, kawals are those people who sing kawalis, right? Baba loved kawalis, are going to come and perform in front of me. And they should all, meaning Mehra and the women should come. I want them to hear the program. So Dr. Gavar says, yes, and go away. Now, who are the 3 famous kawals? The 2 twins and myself. We didn't have a clue about ghazals, kawalis or anything like that. Nothing. As luck has it, Adi Ke Irani was there. He would normally be in Nagar doing Baba's work, but he had some work to do with Baba. So he had come to Guruprasad for 2 or 3 days. Adi was a very accomplished singer. So we grabbed hold of him and said, Adi Kaka, you got to teach us something. He said, no, I don't have time for all this. We said, but Baba, we told him why we need it. So he said, okay, I'll give you something. So he gave us 2 verses of a ghazal and the melody. And the melody also he gave us verbally. He didn't show me how to play it on the harmonium or anything like that. So we practiced that a little bit. Now Baba told us that we can't just have you coming in like this. So we'll find some nice colorful cloth and we'll wrap it around your head to sort of make it look like you're wearing turbans. So he asked Aloba or someone like that to find that. The appointed day comes and, oh, I forgot. Every day after that, Baba would call Dr. Gaver and say, remind Mehra that this program is on such a day and they must come. So, and sometimes he would do it twice a day. The first 2 or 3 times Dr. Gaver said, yes, yes. Then she said, Baba, how many times are you going to tell me this? You've told me this so many times. We know Baba will come. He says, never mind, tell Mehra. So she would, poor thing, she would have to go and tell Mehra this. This went on every day after that. So the appointed day turns up and Baba told us now that, oh, I need to set the stage up to explain this. So Baba's sitting here in this chair, right? The entrance to Mandli Hall for people coming in is about where Sam is, that direction. And there's another door here where the speaker is in that direction, which leads into the main hall and the women's side. So when a program like this took place, the women Mandli, including Mehra and everybody, would come and sit behind the door. And the top half of the door had slats. So they would adjust the slats so that they could see in. but the men couldn't see out. They couldn't see Mera because Mera was with them also. So Baba said, now remember one thing. He said, when you come in through that door, don't look at me straight like this because the women will see you and immediately they'll recognize you and then everything will be finished. So he said, when you come in, obviously when you come in, you greet Baba with joint hands, and he says, you look away like that. So you look in that direction so that the women can't see your face. So we said, yes, Baba. So on the appointed day, Baba also told Aloba at 3 o'clock, you must come in and announce that the Kawals are here. And 5 or 10 minutes before 3 o'clock, there's a tapping on the door. And so Baba says, ask somebody to see what was, and Dr. Gaver is on the other side, tell Baba that all the women are here. So Baba says, good. 3 o'clock, Aloba comes, he says, Baba, he says, the Kawals are here, Baba. So Baba says, come on. What are we waiting for? Let's get the program going. So Aloba gives us the signal. We're waiting outside on the veranda with all these so-called turbans wrapped around us, the three of us. So we come in, and as Baba said, we greet him like this, but our head is that way. We're not looking at Baba, we're looking at the other side. And we sit over there so that the women can't see us. We sit on that side of Baba, so they only see a little bit of us, they don't see a full. So and the harmonium's there and the tabla's there. Of course, when performers come like that, you warm up, so you run your fingers over the harmonium and all that sort of stuff, and you go, you warm up your voice and everything. We did all that. And then we sang the 2 verses. We started abruptly because we hadn't, Adi didn't teach us anything more than that. We started abruptly, and just as abruptly after singing 2 verses, we stopped. And Baba said, that's it. We said, Baba, that's all Adi Kaka taught us, we don't know anything else. So he smiled, and then he looks over to that side to the women mandi and said, did you like it like this? So the next day, Mani in the morning comes. Mani would come on the side to talk to Iraj for some work and stuff often. So she sees us and she says, Baba had really taken us with that joke. We were expecting to hear some nice kawals and everything. But she says, it was a little odd. Normally when a group like that comes, Baba tells us the name of the kawal or the group's name. In this case, he didn't tell us anything. We were wondering why, but we said maybe Baba forgot or he didn't tell us, never mind. But she said, soon as you guys started to warm up, we knew that Baba had taken us. Immediately we knew he'd taken us. And she said, Mera was so upset. When you turn your face away like that from Baba, he said, look at those silly people. Mera said, look at them. They're not even looking at Baba. So we laughed. And we said, Mani aunty, the reason we did that is Baba said, if we look straight, you all will recognize us and the whole thing would fizzle out right there. She said, that's right. So I don't know whether she ever went and told Mera that or not. But she said, Mera was most upset about that. So stuff like that would go on in the afternoon, complete contrast to the mornings. And I was totally taken by that. I forgot that I'd even asked to go to Panchgani, and I never asked my parents again whether they got a response or they didn't get a response. That was also the time my parents said that that's when Baba grabbed you. After that, wild horses couldn't drag me away from him. So now we were having such a, I still have a little time? Couple of minutes, okay. So I'll come back. The other thing that would go on in the afternoon is some close ones would say, Baba, on such and such a day is my birthday or our anniversary or my son's birthday, I'd like to give a lunch for the people who are there. And Baba would say, okay. So in the afternoon, there would be this big lunch in the front veranda of Guruprasad, the main front veranda. The men on the men's side, women on the women's side. At the end of the veranda, on both sides, there was a wooden bench, and Baba would sit on the wooden bench on the women's side, and he would just watch. And often he would then walk up and down and talk to people and chit-chat. And occasionally, when the boys were serving food, Baba would come with them and serve food. So if rice was being served, Baba would have this big flat, utensil, put in the rice and put it in your plate. It would normally be a thali or a banana leaf is what we would eat on. And you would say, Baba, thank you. That's enough, Baba, no more. He said, enough, no more. Then he would go. And he put another full. He said, oh, Baba, what are you doing? How am I going to eat? He says, remember, don't waste even 1 grain of rice. You must eat it all. And your stomach would be like this, but you'd have to eat it all, because he said that. He would do that to different people. I think he may have done that to me once, but he would do it to others also all the time. So, and it's funny, just about 10 or 12 years ago, I was reading something, and in that, it mentioned that Baba had this habit even in the early days of Mehrabad, in the 20s, when he had just collected his mandli and he was training them, and he would serve them food. That time he would serve everybody food. And he had this same habit. He would give them a lot more than they wanted. And the mandli would say, oh, Baba, why are you doing this? I can't eat this. And they would waste it. So one day, Baba did this with one of the mandli. I can't remember who it was. And that fellow he got really annoyed with Baba. He says, Baba, how many times do we tell you, you're giving us so much, then we waste it, and you don't like us wasting food, but how can we eat it? Baba said, he says, you think I'm only giving you food, but what I'm really giving you, he said, you don't know. He said, so make sure you don't waste anything. Now, whether that applied in the Guruprasad days or not, I don't know, but it was interesting that I read that. There was an old habit he had from the 1920s. So you want me to stop?
Yeah, because there'll be another, this afternoon we look forward to hearing more.
Okay, so we'll take a break there then.